Welcome to the Communication 24/7 podcast, where we communicate about how we communicate. I'm your host, Jennifer Furlong. So let me paint a picture for you. You are at a networking event, or you could even be at a party, or maybe you're just out in a restaurant and you see that one person from work who can make things happen. And you know, this is your one shot at having a very quick conversation with them. So you can introduce yourself and try to make an impact. But the one problem is you have no idea what in the hell you want to say. This is what we call the elevator pitch, the dreaded elevator pitch. And we have all been there. So, this is one of many reasons why I have asked my guest to be here today, Kym Dakin. She is going to help lead us through this very troublesome topic of the elevator pitch. But, she also has some really great things that I want to talk to her about as far as communication skills goes. She's a trainer, consultant, coach, she's an author. She has helped so many organizations improve their team building and how to bring people in and just, be a part of the culture that exists within that organization. So, we're going to talk also a little bit about improv and creativity and how we might apply those concepts in order to become more effective communicators. So, Kym, I don't know if you can tell, but I'm super stoked that you're here.
I can tell that, and I'm super stoked likewise.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I love your podcast. I love the topic. People think communications is like this broad catch-all topic, but it's the source of so many other things. And that's why it's important. And I'm just thrilled to be here.
Yeah.
We're going to have a lot of fun.
Absolutely. Yeah. And thank you for saying that. One of my biggest pet peeves, people, because it is just a huge umbrella term, communication, and we could narrow down that focus in so many different ways. But the one thing I don't like is when I hear somebody call it a soft skill. You've heard that. Yeah. I'm like, there ain't nothing soft about this, right? This is the one skill, your professional life, your personal life. If you want to influence things that are happening in your community, this is probably the most important skill that you need to learn to develop.
That's right.
So yes, thank you. Thank you for that little just recognition, the importance of what it is that we're talking about today. So for our listeners, would you mind just telling us a little bit about yourself? What's your journey? How did you come to decide that you wanted to be a coach and a consultant in this area?
Yeah, well, I have been a trainer for quite some time, but I've also I spent quite a lot of time in the performing arts. I was actually on Broadway for a brief afternoon as an understudy. Right. I was also in several off-Broadway shows, a couple of touring shows. So I got rid of my fear of being in front of people fairly early on. But as an introvert, I understand a lot of the mindset that we drag along when it comes to being our authentic selves in public. And you mentioned improvisation. Improvisation, when you think about it, we're always improvising all the time. But whether we do it effectively or not is another question. And I find that when I coach people, when I bring in improvisation, oftentimes it's the notion of saying yes to whatever comes up, saying yes to a challenge, saying yes to a new idea, saying yes to the person who needs to have an in-depth conversation with you. And I guess if I had a guiding principle for my professional life, it would be that I almost always default to saying yes. I'll tell this very brief story. the pandemic, right? The shutdown. We all went through it. We all have our stories about this
Oh,
time.
yeah. Mhm.
But I noticed early on, even though I had a really nice, juicy year to look forward to, but it was all in person, so it all evaporated. And I thought, well, the silver lining is time, right? For the first time in my adult professional life, I had days of unstructured time. So I decided to write a book through Seth Godin's writing and community program. And I decided to take a class for women in developing online products.
Mm.
Now, I am not a techie. I truly am not. On no planet am I a techie. But I decided to embrace this because a couple of years prior, I had put together a card game to lead groups that were in conflict through conflict to collaboration. And I thought I got great feedback on it. But part of it was, I wonder if I could put this online. Well, it turns out I couldn't for a variety of reasons. The first one being the most important element of creating an online product is addressing the right problem.
Mm, mhm.
So, long story short, the guy who created the class liked the problem I had come up with, which was how to increase engagement in online meetings,
Mm.
right? Everybody's distracted. Everybody's got their kids and their pets and their significant others in the background. We're all juggling 50 things. Somebody takes themselves off video, and you know that they're either eating or they're scratching or
That's
they're
right.
changing their clothes, whatever it is they're doing. So he liked that problem. And he was after me to do the second rendition of the class. And I mean, after me. He emailed me, he called me, he texted me. He said, I like your problem and I want to work with you on it. And I have grant money to put behind it. Well,
Mm,
the grant money,
okay.
my attention.
That's right.
So, so we created together a bookmarking app called Nugget. Nugget was sold last year for a nice hefty price. It essentially gives you the ability to take notes in online meetings without disconnecting yourself from the person in front of you and without having to sort through reams of video to tease out the essential elements.
Mhm.
So, with the push of a button, I can highlight the text on the transcript that says, this is important, pay attention to this. Plus, I can send only those important elements to my team, should I choose to do. So,
Mm.
it was very exciting helping create that.
Yeah, I bet.
And I didn't have much to do with the technology, but I became pretty damn good at pitching. So, in these pitch contests, I'm in there with 20 somethings, who are looking at me like, who's this old girl? Well, I became the nugget lady and I became the one to beat. So, um, saying yes, I would say, is
Mhm.
an improvisation a concept that has served me pretty well. And it's one that I encourage other people to embrace as well with, you know, with certain guidelines and parameters. You
Yeah.
can't say yes to everything. It's impossible and will make you crazy.
That's right. Yeah, yeah. We do have to have some boundaries, but I love the overall concept of that. Being able to say yes to things is empowering. And
Yes.
sometimes I think we are our own worst enemies in that we will talk ourselves out of things before we even give it a chance. I mean, at least if we try and you know what? The entire station burned down when you were trying, at least you can say you tried it. You had no idea if this new tool that you were creating was going to take off or not, but you took that chance, you said yes to it, and it worked out really well for you. I think that's a fantastic example of, one of the reasons, the things that can happen
That's right.
when we
Well,
allow ourselves to do that.
right. And at a minimum, right? Like the Alanis Morissette song, right? You
Mhm.
learn,
Yeah, that's right.
right?
Yeah,
You
yeah.
learn.
Constantly learning, and that's one of the things about being a communication person. If you are focusing on improving your communication skills, one of the things I think you learn very quickly is that every single day, you can work on this skill, and there's going to be something new to learn. There's going to be something new to try out, and it may work in some situations. It may not work, in some situations. People are different. So, one communication tool you use with one person, and it seems to you know just how to make them tick the way you want them to tick, and then you try it on somebody else and it kind of like just falls flat right there. So that's what makes it interesting and exciting and frustrating all at the same time, because if you're the type of person where just give me one thing that's going to make it better, no, that's not how this works,
That's
not by
right.
any stretch of the imagination.
I think I'm really glad you brought that up, Jen,
Mhm.
because in my blog post today, I referenced, I believe it was Atul Gawande, who noted the difference between complicated problems and complex problems,
Hmm.
right?
That's right.
Complicated problems may be difficult,
Yeah.
but once you find the solution, you can replicate that solution
Mhm.
and it will fix the problem next time it comes up. But with human beings and communication, those are complex
Yeah.
problems. One size does not fit all.
Mhm.
Those are case by case solutions, right?
Yeah.
That's why
Yeah.
HR departments get in such trouble. They're always trying to create replicable solutions for complex problems.
Yeah.
It doesn't work. People get frustrated. So,
Absolutely. I mean, that's such a fantastic example, in the workplace. One person does something that kind of screws it up, for everybody else. And instead of addressing with that one individual, or instead of looking at, okay, in this one instance, this is what happened. Now let's punish everybody, or let's make up a new rule.
that's
Where
right.
everybody has to, here's another guideline, and maybe that's not even necessary in
That's
the
right.
workplace. But you're making me think of uh, your work with improv and creativity, talking about how humans are complex beings, and communication, there is not some, a silver bullet out there that's going to be able to just fix the problem for everybody across the board. um, I would imagine that having those improv skills really that's a tool that you can use that is really effective in
Mm.
in different scenarios and with different people. So tell me a little bit about that. How did you take me back to you when you first started developing your own improv skills, and how did
Yeah.
that, over the years, how have you been able to hone those skills in a communication sense?
Really good question, Jen. Thank you for that. And yeah, there's a lot of juice in that question.
Yeah. Oh,
Think,
good.
you know, as an introvert, one of the reasons theater and scripts appeal to me is that the playwright gives you the words to say, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so weaning myself off of that dependency was was truly not easy. I think I had a belief that I wouldn't be able to come up with the words I needed to say when I needed to say them. And I'd had multiple examples throughout my life of someone saying something to me and my reaction being one like deer in the headlights. It's like the world slows down. Like, what did you just tell me? Right?
Yeah.
Like my brain has just gone completely blank.
Yeah. Yeah. The hiccup.
So the hiccup, absolutely the hiccup. Um, and so I think that sort of visceral experience uh, made going into improvisation really trepidatious. But the way that I got into it was through a fabulous improvisation form called playback theater. Playback theater, and you can look this up. It's all over the globe. It's been around since the 70s, but it's kind of a best kept secret. It doesn't tend to call attention to itself the way, movies and Broadway does.
Mm.
Um, because playback is about real people telling true stories. And playback is an improv form that will play those stories back in real time according to some improvisational structures. So it's structured improvisation. Um, and I was part of that troupe for 15 years. So what teased me into improvisation was the true story element. True
Mm.
story, people's true stories have always fascinated me, which
Yes.
is one of the impetuses behind my book. Um, I wanted to tell the true stories of people who came to me
Mhm.
with issues around communication
Mm.
and listening discoveries that we found in my work with them that built part of the model for this book, Head, Heart, and Hand Listening. But for improvisation, I had to build it. I had to build trust in myself slowly. And that's really what it is. It's trust in yourself. So there's that. But there's also, I think, the other gift that improvisation gave me personally is the ability to step outside the boundaries of the realistic. Um, the coach program that I undertook a few years ago was put together by Shirzad Shamin. It's called Positive Intelligence. And he outlines 9 different saboteurs that we all have in some combination, but also 5 sage powers that we can strengthen in order to mute the influence of our saboteurs. I know I'm getting into the weeds here, but stick
No, no, I love this. I'm like, I'm paying so close attention. I'm just
okay.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
just keep it coming.
okay. Um, but one of the 5 sage powers is innovate. And he employs a game. He's got a game going on for each of these 5 sage powers. But the one for innovate is my favorite because it's based in improvisation, right? So if you come to me with, or you come to your group with an issue that you would like some brainstorming on, if we played the yes and game, A, we'd have a lot of fun. B, we would push the envelope of the group on what is considered realistic and possible,
Mm.
right? So if you came to me with a problem, is there an issue or a problem that comes up for you just off the top of your head?
For me personally, um, yeah, I often feel overwhelmed by all of the things that I'm doing, and I love all of the things that I'm doing. And sometimes I feel pressure to maybe give up some of the things, but I don't want to.
That's right. Sometimes I look at all the things I'm doing and I consider them to be hungry children,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
It's one thing to launch them, but then you have to raise them, and
That's
then you
right.
have to take care of them. So, yeah, you've got a lot of hungry children. I
Mhm.
hear you. I totally relate to that. So, if we were to play the yes and game, there's a couple of rules. The language is very specific, right? So, if you come to me with that problem, and I say to you, well, one idea you could employ is to make a graphic drawing of each of these things that you want to do, pin it up on your wall, and put the priorities visually in the top row. Okay. Your language around something like that would be, oh, what I like about that
Mhm.
idea is whatever you like about that idea.
Yeah.
Then you would add to that idea,
Mhm.
right? And then I would say to whatever you added, oh, what I like about that idea is, and on we would go. Now, past a certain point, you start to realize these are very realistic solutions.
Mhm.
These are very on budget solutions. Let's try to get a little bit out there and
Yeah,
see what happens, right?
yeah.
Because the nature of the game is you have got to find 10% of what that person just put into the circle,
Mhm,
10% validity. It's the 10% rule.
mhm.
Heard of the
Yeah.
10% rule?
I'm not familiar with it.
Okay.
Yeah.
10% rule says that every idea, no matter how wacky and weird, has at least 10% validity.
I love
So,
it. Yeah,
right? So
yeah.
instead of saying, "Oh, that will never work because we're already over budget and blah blah, and we tried that last year and blah blah," right? And that person who offered that idea gets shot down and silenced
Oh, and we'll probably keep their mouth shut from here on out.
for the
Mhm.
rest of the time,
Yeah,
right? Right. We've all been in those situations.
yeah,
And there are people, what are they? They're not pot stirrers, but devil's advocate.
yeah.
Devil's advocate, right? My job as devil's advocate is to shoot holes in your idea, right? Because that's what I'm good at, right? I'm good at saying no. I'm not good at coming up with anything else. We've all encountered those people in meetings, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So, devil's advocate doesn't know what the hell to do when
Mm,
you play the yes and game
yeah,
because suddenly, oh, I have to not only find 10% of that weird, wacky idea and articulate it, then I have to come up with something of my own.
yeah, I have to build on that. I can't just tear it down because it's pretty easy to tear something down.
Sure is.
Yeah,
Yeah, we see that happening in Congress all the time, don't we?
right, yeah.
And I will limit my political musing to that statement only.
Right. This is such a fantastic point that you're making with yes and. I think all too often not only are we very eager to shoot our own ideas down and we don't even give them the space they need to grow and to, who cares how crazy that idea seems at the time, but we're also very good at knocking down other people's ideas and we don't even realize we're doing it because the whole devil's advocate thing, I have been guilty of that, myself. When you're sitting there trying to think of quote realistic solutions to the problems and then you get so hyper focused on finding the things that you can't do, it is really easy to just go down that black hole of negativity and, okay, well, we just spent, 2 hours slamming our brains up against the brick wall here, and look, we have absolutely nothing to show for it now. We haven't even moved forward, and then we wanna know why. We're wondering why.
Right, right.
Oh, because there is no solution, it's hopeless. That's just not
Yeah.
the case at all.
Mm.
I love that. I just love, the idea of that yes and. If you are an organizational psychologist, an HR professional, or just someone who wants to strengthen your listening skills, you should pick up a copy of Head, Heart, and Hands Listening today. This book explores the 3 listening modalities of head, heart, and hands as active, but largely unconscious lenses that inform the potency of our listening. It also includes a comprehensive listening assessment so you can improve listening in targeted ways. Get a copy of Head, Heart, and Hands Listening by clicking on the link in the show notes.
Well, the how-tos on the yes and are included in my book. So, just so you know, right?
Absolutely. Yeah,
And
that's gonna be a useful tool, and I'm gonna make sure that not only do I get a copy of it, but we're gonna put that link in the show notes as well. Make
super.
sure that everybody else gets it because, that right there, is worth it alone, and I'm sure there are all kinds of other golden nuggets that are hidden in there.
Oh, yeah.
Um,
I put
so
just
it
about every golden nugget I know of.
Yeah.
Well, because and this is why, when the book got accepted, I
Mhm,
I wrote, I think, 6 book proposals with the help of a wonderful editor,
mhm.
Heather Evans at Routledge. Uh, finally got the sixth one accepted. And I had come up with about 26,000 words for my book. And I thought I'd said everything I had to say. And
Yeah,
she said, "Oh, we've accepted it. And oh, by the way, your book now has to be 3 times as long."
that's right.
So you better believe every golden nugget I ever encountered in my life is in this book.
You're like, "What?" So that's when you were like, "Yes, and"
That's right. A big yes and.
'cause
Yeah.
talk about a big problem that you have to
Like,
solve.
oh, whoa.
Like,
Yeah.
"Let me use this. I'm gonna apply this concept right here."
That's right.
Um,
I went the book, I'll just talk for a little bit
mhm,
about it.
yeah.
Um, it's, built on a Waldorf model of early childhood education, which is head, heart, and hands listening,
Mm,
and I brought it into the adult training realm. I've done numerous trainings on this, and I started to get curious when I was working with the Department of Environmental Protection
mm,
on with their field operators who were going into having conversations with landowners that were trying to do something that was in with their land that was in violation of some environmental code. So you can imagine the tenor of these
yeah, yeah,
conversations.
that's yeah,
They
yeah.
were
Not
not
overly friendly.
no, they were not friendly. And these, these field operators were science geeks,
Yeah.
head listeners to the max because they've got data retention, and they in these conversations they were just looking for opportunities to bring more information into the conversation as a
Mhm,
way to change a person's mind.
mm,
And as a communication expert, I know you know how well
mm,
that worked. Like,
yeah,
not at all.
right. In one ear and out the other.
That's right.
Blah,
And so
blah, blah.
blah, blah, blah. And so they hired me as a communications
Mhm,
person to come in and help them.
mhm,
But right away, I understood it's not so much what they're saying as what they're listening for.
yeah.
And so I had to start getting them to listen for opportunities to build alliance.
Mhm,
What's the dream underneath filling in the wetlands,
mhm,
right?
yeah.
Right? Is he trying to build a playground for his grandkids? Is he trying to build a parking lot so he's for his used car business? You
Mhm.
know, whatever it is, get underneath that dream, position yourself as an ally, and then that person will start listening to you.
Yeah,
All
yeah.
right. And
'Cause whatever it is that they're wanting to do, I mean, it's valid.
that's right.
So
That's exactly right. And you've got to find that validity.
mhm,
But I started to get curious about how our professions have us listening for certain information and downplaying other kinds.
mm,
We only have a certain amount of attention and bandwidth, but the stuff that we're bypassing in terms of our own retention and our own attention
mhm,
um, can come back to bite us in the butt.
mhm,
And it often does. And that's exactly what was happening to those field operators. So that was the initial piece of work that sparked this book and sparked the journey for me.
yeah,
I got curious about my own listening, and as a communicator and a woman, okay, there it is, gender bias. Um, I assumed that I had heart listening in spades.
mhm,
And then my daughter started going through a really rocky adolescence. She would, she would come home. She didn't have a date for the prom. Her face was breaking out. One of her friends was mean to her. Night after night, we're sitting on the deck, holding her hand with a tissue box, blowing her nose,
teen angst.
and we're angst, adolescent angst in spades. And I discovered for myself that, after a while, I'm like, okay, what are we going to do about it?
Yeah,
Right? How can we fix this?
you're speaking my language.
It's like I've only got so much capacity, starting
Right.
to feel like a broken record. Um, and so that's where hands listening comes into play.
Mm,
I begin with heart listening, but I go to hands listening pretty quickly,
mm,
which is an Achilles heel of my own. because oftentimes, like with my daughter, she would go, "Mom, I just need you to listen," right? Which parent
I am. I've been
daughter
listening
has
this whole
taught her the word?
time.
Right, right. It's like definition of insanity.
Right.
Uh, But hands listening is about finding solutions to problems.
Mm,
And so I'm listening for things I could fix, things I could do something about. I'm listening for what could work in
mm,
the future going forward. Heart listeners, with their reams of empathy,
mhm,
are very much in the present. They're
mhm.
engaged with what's happening one on one between you and me right now in our conversation.
That's
They
right.
can tune into facial expressions, vocal tone, body language, what's happening underneath the content. Very present. Head listeners are very engaged with what's already been proven in
Mm,
the past, what's been designated as facts. They're the people who can retain all kinds of information. I myself am not a head listener, but I have had listeners in my life
yeah.
who I call upon, right? Who have been extremely valuable in my own professional process. Um, and I know that there are ways I can amplify my own head listening, which I put in the head listening
Mhm,
chapters in the book. But um, each of us has a couple different modalities. Most of us specialize in maybe in one, maybe two,
mhm.
right? Uh, it's a rare bird that's got all three.
Yeah.
Um, there's a fun assessment, both online at kymdakin.com, where I tell you a true story that happened to me.
Mm,
And you can tease out your own head listening modality. Or it's also in the book. It's a
mhm.
pretty comprehensive assessment, but it's a lot of fun. So that's kind of it in a nutshell.
Yeah, yeah. I appreciate you bringing up the listening, because that is something that I think a lot of people struggle with, and we find ourselves in trouble when we're not aware enough or maybe mindful enough that as we're in there that moment and we're having a conversation with someone, we can be using the wrong listening style, and that's the one thing. And I think, I've never thought about it in these terms before, but having this conversation with you, it's really bringing to mind for me that there are even a lot of improv skills that you're developing as you're developing your listening skills and identifying when you need to switch between one listening style to the next.
Yes.
I know for me, it's very, very challenging to use the heart listening as you're describing it,
Yeah.
and it go on and on. And then it goes away, but then it comes back and it's like the same thing again and again and again. But I recognize that, and I'll tell you a really quick, funny story. Listeners have probably already heard this before, but y'all just deal with it. So, people who know me, I they know that it's challenging for me to have that type of empathy in the moment because I am so, well, let's just get to the problem. I'm like, just stop with the emotions. Let's focus on the problem. Then we don't have to worry about it anymore. But I had one person, she really surprised me. She was like, "Jen, I just don't see that in you. I think you are one of the most empathetic people I've ever met." And I started laughing. I said, "I've got you so fooled." You know what has happened is I have learned how to switch to the type of listening that needs to happen in that moment
That's
so
right.
that I have everybody fooled into thinking I'm empathetic when really I'm just, like, sitting there giving you the space you need, and hopefully that's just all. But if you come back to me 2 or 3 times, get ready because 'cause I'm gonna be like, "You're upset about this, and I think you have every right to be upset about this, and it's time let's figure something out.
There it is. That's right. That's hand listening right there. Yep, absolutely. Great
Yeah,
story.
yeah, you were just making me think of that, talking about your daughter as well. My daughter's 25,
Mm.
so we went through the exact same thing, that teen angst phase, and man, it is difficult.
Oh,
Yeah.
it's brutal. It's brutal. I know I kept saying there's gotta be a biological reason for all of this awfulness, right?
Absolutely.
And I
Yeah.
I bet your daughter, like my daughter, is one of the most resilient mid-20s
Oh, yeah.
women.
Oh,
Yep,
yeah. Oh,
there it
yeah.
is.
I'm so proud of her, and I
Mhm.
think it's just a testament to for women in general. And I think we all go through that phase at some point where we're just moody as hell, and the whole world is ending, and nothing is happening right, and
Right.
I hate this and that and the other thing, and it's just, we
Yeah.
got into the worst argument in the middle of a department store one time. I remember she was 13 and we were shopping for clothes, and she hated everything, and I'm like, just try it on. You don't have to buy, but how do you know if you don't like it if you don't at least put it on? Long story short, we ended up leaving and not buying a damn thing because we couldn't get past the arguing.
That's right. There it is.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh,
So, moms, we get you. We
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 get
we feel
it.
you. Yeah.
And then when you were going through all of that angst and all those descriptions, it's like there's adolescence and then there's menopause.
Yeah. 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 That's fun. Yeah, so we have all of these things working against us, which is why it's so good that we talk about these things, like the tools that you and I have been talking about. It some days it works and some days, they don't work. It's okay. It's
Right.
okay. It's all a grand experiment in my mind.
Yeah. Good. Well, I know you want to get to the elevator pitch.
Yes, that's so thank you. Thank you for transitioning to that, because I would this whole time I'll just keep talking and then it'll be like, "Wait a minute, we have 10 minutes and we still haven't gotten to the elevator pitch." So,
I do wanna before we transition
uh-huh.
completely, I do wanna bring up active listening, right?
Mhm.
Because when
Yeah.
you were describing how
Mhm.
people describe you,
Yeah.
we've all kind of been steeped now in active
Mhm.
listening, right?
Yeah.
Um, where, we're mirroring
Yeah.
our our person's our partner's facial
Yeah.
expressions, body language, and
Yeah.
we are asking questions and
Mhm.
digging in deeper. But I feel like at this juncture, for
Mhm.
many people who are in a hurry,
Yeah.
active listening has become acting like we're listening
Yes.
until the other person takes
Yes.
a breath and we can barge in, right?
You're so right. I taught public speaking and human communication courses for 18 years.
Mm,
And I used to tease my students because we would talk about listening, and I would tell them, some of you, I can tell you have mastered the art of fake listening. Like, you have been taught so much about how do you actively listen, and you're so focused on those things, like everything you just described,
mhm,
the eye contact, the head nods, the
right.
and it's like, if that's what you're thinking about, then you're not listening. If you're actually listening, you don't even have to think about that stuff. It's gonna come across, it's gonna happen naturally. So, that was just a fun memory you just made me think of with the students, and they would laugh, and they're like, "Yeah, you're right."
Right. Busted.
That's right. Well, you could just see it in their faces. You're like, "Wah, wah, wah," and you can tell you've turned into Charlie Brown's teacher, the "wah, wah, wah," and they're still looking at you, but they have that thousand-yard stare, yet they still manage to shake their head and
Oh, I love that.
nod in agreement at
1,000 yards
the right
stare.
time. Yeah. So it's yeah. So the lesson there, folks, do not try to fake listen or, do the whole quote. I'm doing air quotes. active listening thing, mirroring and all of it. That's what you're focused on. You're not going to make a connection
That's
that
right.
way. Yeah. Yeah.
Instead, uh, if you can activate your genuine, authentic curiosity,
Yeah.
that goes a big distance.
Yeah.
Even if somebody is talking about something and droning on and on and on, if you can find
Mhm.
one nugget to ask a question, a good question
Yeah.
that will take the droner off the
Yeah.
surface of what they're saying,
Yeah.
you have done both yourself and the person who's speaking a big favor.
Yeah. Go deep. Go deep. I think introverts are especially good at that
I think so too.
quality.
Yeah,
Yeah.
good.
Mhm. Tooting our own horns.
It's okay.
But, yeah, so let's talk about, the elevator pitch.
Yeah.
It's such an important skill to be able to develop and, whether you are walking up to someone that you wanna strike up a conversation with because you think they're the person that you need, to network with, or maybe you're in an interview and they ask you that question, that dreaded question, "Tell me about yourself," like, "Oh, what the hell do I say to that?" So, yeah, let's talk about the elevator pitch and what are some of the things that you think could help us become better at that?
Um, well, first of all, I I I think we should ditch the pitch.
Mhm.
And I think we can create a very short story that will tell the person asking more about who we are
Yeah.
using 3 ingredients,
Mhm.
okay?
Okay.
Something about who you are, something authentic. You know, example, I'm a working mom and a small business owner
Mhm.
grappling with how to make online meetings more engaging.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
So that's a problem I'm working with or something I'm curious about,
Yeah.
right? It's not the whole story, but there are some good ingredients in there.
Yeah.
Next, something about what you've done. So you have a chance to establish credibility,
Mm.
right? So, for example, when I was talking about Nugget, I got a team together to produce an online bookmarking app called Nugget.
Mhm.
And even though I'm not a techie, it turns out I'm really good in the pitch contests.
Yeah.
And you can add an element of good news, right? Good news, sold Nugget for a nice price, and better news, right? This gained me 3 new entrepreneurs as presentation training and pitch coaching clients. So, something about what I want is the last ingredient,
Mhm.
right? I love working with introverts and entrepreneurs on the cusp of greater visibility. If you know someone who could use my services, I'd love for you to get in touch with me,
Mm.
right?
I really like that. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So that is all put together in one of my blog posts that I
Mhm.
can send you the link directly
Mhm.
to as a way to put that together.
Yeah.
It's concise. You don't have to go off into, too many rabbit holes.
Mhm.
Um, I like the addition personally about good news and better news. You
Yeah.
stay positive, right?
Yeah.
Um, and the call to action, right? The something you want, as long as you make that kind of open ended. Do you know anybody who could use my
Yeah.
services? If you do, have
Right.
them get in touch with me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
That is such a fantastic way to gain some insight into someone, just as you were describing your own story and that
Mhm.
experience that you had and going into Nugget and putting that team together and how you were describing that. It just makes me think of, okay, here's someone who is resourceful, someone who can reach out to others, someone who is probably a good team player now. Here's someone who is a good problem solver, not afraid to do something new and different. I got all kinds of stuff out of that just from you sharing that one teeny tiny story, and taking it, through those steps that you went through. I really like that. I've heard a lot of, tools, that people will introduce to do that elevator pitch, and you're right. Um, Even just the sound of the word pitch, it just in some way comes off as disingenuous, doesn't it?
It sure does.
Yeah.
That's right. Pitch makes us twitch.
Yeah. Like, "Oh, here we go, here we go."
Yep, I gotta jump into sales mode now.
Right, and that's what it is. You hit the nail on the head right there. It's sales mode, and here comes the laundry list
Yeah,
of all of the positive adjectives that I can come up with to try to describe myself without really getting too deep, without really getting you to see who I am as a person.
that's right.
Yeah, yeah. So I really, really appreciate you sharing that with us. And when you think about it, earlier I said whether there's somebody that you want to, strike up a conversation with very quickly, or if you're already in the interview,
Yeah,
and they ask you that tell me about yourself question.
yeah.
What a fantastic way to answer that question.
That's right. You
Yeah.
just need to keep a couple of ingredients in mind.
Yeah.
And you're telling them a story, right?
Right. Yeah. And that's how we connect.
That's right.
Or through our stories.
Exactly.
I feel like in just this time that, you and I have had this conversation and sharing our different stories, I can already tell that, if you and I were able to meet in real life and just have dinner and, maybe a couple of glasses of wine, I mean, it would it'd be pulling a all-nighter, with that. I just feel like I know you so well just from listening to you share
Mm,
your stories, and I am able to feel that connection with you now, because of that. And wow, so what a powerful, powerful way to exemplify the things, that you're talking about in your book. And, I'm sure what you talk about when you go into different organizations and work
mm,
with different teams.
yeah.
Um, yeah, that's
And
fantastic.
I would love to pull together a workshop for women on this elevator pitch.
Yeah,
We could have a lot of fun.
yeah.
So you've sparked something. You've sparked a new idea for me.
I know. This is the great thing about having these conversations, right?
Right. Jen, this has been delightful. Thank you so
Absolutely.
much.
Yeah, yeah. Let's go ahead and wrap it up because we're already coming up on 50 minutes here.
Yep.
So
Okay.
time flies when you're
Mhm.
having fun, but I don't want to end the conversation without giving you the opportunity. Is there something that you feel is important that our listeners hear from you before we wrap things up?
Um, I would just encourage them to come and check out my website,
Mhm.
kymdakin.com, and have a sample coaching session with me.
Mm,
We could have a lot of fun. I use the positive intelligence model, but I also use a lot of improv and a lot of the things that we talked about today.
yeah.
So I'm just inviting people to show up, try it. You might like it.
Yeah, I bet. I bet they will. And you have inspired me to look up some improv classes that might be happening around me.
Beautiful.
It was called Playbook?
A playback.
Playback.
Yes. And there
Right.
are most likely a company in town near you.
Yeah, yeah. I'm gonna look it up. I'm gonna go have some
Do.
fun with that because
Oh,
I
it's
think
wicked fun.
yeah, yeah. We all need a little fun.
We sure do. We sure do.
All right, Kim, it has been such a pleasure having you on the show, having this conversation with you. I feel inspired. I feel hopeful. I feel motivated. And I know the listeners feel the exact same way. And I do hope that you'll consider coming back at some point. Maybe, after the new year, we'll just touch base again.
I would
And
love that.
because there are lots of things that we can continue this conversation about.
Yes, indeed. Okay. Thank you
uh,
so much, Jen.
Absolutely. All
Oh,
right. Uh-huh.
one more plug for the book.
Yeah.
You go to the Routledge website,
Mhm.
Routledge, and look up Head, Heart, and Hands Listening. You can get a discount on the book price through the end of the month,
Okay.
August 31st.
Okay. Well, thank you for sharing that. All right. Listeners, I know you enjoyed this as much as I did. I really hope that you take the things that we talked about to heart, apply them, and practice them some more because that's what communication skills are all about. It's just, the grand experiment. Just keep working at it. All right. I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks so
Bye.
much, Jen. Take care.
You too. Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this episode and you'd like to help support the podcast, please share it with others, post about it on social media, or leave a rating and a review.